Welcome to Talkin' Mets with Rob. Subscribe to the channel for all your New York Mets in-game live, pre-game, post-game, round-table podcast, and all the breaking news for our New York Mets. Enjoy the show and let's go Mets.
What's up, Mets fans? So welcome back to the channel as we got some breaking news here for our New York Mets, starting off the early part of the offseason while the playoffs are going on. The Mets are making major shakeup, major moves in their coaching department as the Mets and David Stearns have fired Jeremy Hefner, have fired Eric Chavez, have fired Jeremy Barnes. Gibbons has walked away. And Mike Sawball, the third base coach and infield coach, is also being let go. So major coaching changes to the New York Mets. And listen, Met fans probably wanted everybody's head throughout this season, right? It was Hefner, it was Chavez, it was Barnes, it was not really much Gibbons because nobody really cared about Gibbons. But again, he's part of that coaching staff. And every scapegoat that we've talked about is basically gone now. And the one guy remaining is Carlos Mendoza. So what does that really mean? Does that mean Carlos Mendoza has more input? Because we all know that Jeremy Hefner was already here. Eric Chavez was already here. Obviously, Jeremy Barnes was already here. John Gibbons came in with Mendoza, right? Sawball came in with Mendoza. So what does that really mean? Does that mean that Mendoza is going to have more of a say in his coaching staff than he did when he first got hired 2 years ago? Or is it Carlos Mendoza is getting one more shot at this? Because I don't know if everybody agrees with this, but I know for a fact that Carlos Mendoza is going to be on the hot seat next year, very early on in the season. If things don't work out early in the season, I would not be shocked if David Stearns goes in a different direction mid-season. And we've seen that happen a lot of times throughout baseball. And I think Carlos Mendoza is now on the hot seat. But it is going to be interesting because I don't know if everybody remembers this, but back when Carlos Mendoza was hired, they asked him about his coaching staff. And Willie Randolph was a topic of conversation. Will Willie Randolph be a part of the coaching staff? Will Carlos Beltran be a part of the coaching staff? Now, I don't think anybody would have a problem with a former Mets manager who was really good for this team and a guy that I'm not sure why Willie Randolph never got a managerial job after the Mets, but that would be a tremendous amount of experience on the bench with Carlos Mendoza. I know John Gibbons had a lot of experience, but Willie Randolph is New York, right? We know he's a Yankee, blah, 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 and all that stuff. But he's a good coach. He's a really good coach. And we all know about Carlos Beltran, who was the manager for the Mets for about 3 days. And then he got obviously let go because of the scandal with the Astros. But Carlos Mendoza can be good in both ends, right? What would he would be? What type of coach would he be? Would he be hitting coach? Would he be a third base, first base coach? I don't see that being the case for Carlos Beltran. It'd probably be the hitting coach. Obviously, Antoine Richardson is the only guy left standing on that coaching staff. And I understand why, because if one thing has gone right for the New York Mets in 2025, it was stolen bases. And Antoine Richardson had a huge part in that, and he gets to keep his job along with Carlos Mendoza. So it is interesting to look at. And you would think the coaching staff would be put together prior to the World Series being over. I think over the next couple of weeks, you're going to have the bench coach, hitting coach, pitching coach, third base coach, and whatever coach that they got rid of. And there might still be more, bullpen coach, who knows what else. But I think by the time the World Series is over, because when the World Series is over, what is it, 10 days after the World Series, free agency starts, guys can opt out of their contract. Let's go. Like, you got to have the coaching staff ready to go. You can't have this, oh, well, we'll get a pitching coach, tomorrow, and then we'll get a hitting coach, in the end of November. Can't play games with that. You got to have the coaching staff ready to go. I want David Stearns, Carlos Mendoza, and his staff to be ready to go for free agency. There is no playing games anymore. You had a disaster of a season. 99% of your moves did not work out this year. And you got to get to work right away. You can't have this happen again. You can't have a high expectation type of year, which has been a trend through the New York Mets history and their organization. When there's high expectations, they usually choke those expectations away. That can't happen anymore. You got to fix the problem. We all know what the problems were. The problems were the starting pitching. The problems was the bullpen at times, two different bullpens in the same season. You had one bullpen to start the season, and then in the second part of the year, you had a whole new revamped bullpen that also didn't work. So 2 bullpens, 2 shit jobs, starting rotation that was a question mark from the jump, and ended up being a complete disaster while you had to use all your top pitching prospects because you were so desperate in need of pitching because you did a terrible job in that department in the offseason by acquiring via trade or acquiring via free agency in the offseason. And then you had the opportunity to fix your mistakes at the trade deadline, and you did nothing to fix that part of the team. That is a complete and utter failure by David Stearns. And as it always happens, there's always going to be scapegoats. David Stearns is safe. Carlos Mendoza is safe. So to make everybody and Met fans, are not going to cry any tears for Jeremy Hefner, Eric Chavez, John Gibbons, and Jeremy Barnes and Mike Salvar. They're not. We're just not. Right? I don't think these guys are the reason why the Mets played like shit for 4 months of the season and had 83 wins. It's just a fact. If you believe that Jeremy Barnes and Eric Chavez, John Gibbons, Jeremy Hefner are the reasons why, or it's more of the David Stearns, and I'll even throw Carlos Mendoza in that mix, that were the problem. You can't tell me that a Clay Holmes, Montas, Griffin Cannon, and bringing back Sean Manaea on ace-like money was the way to go, and you thought it was going to be successful. I'm sorry. It's stupid. Yeah, committee, I don't believe that, though. Because you know what? Where was all the credit from Jeremy Hefner last year? Where was all the credit from given to Chavez last year when since June of last year or the middle of May of last year, the Mets had the best offense in baseball? Jeremy Hefner didn't get no credit last year for turning Manaea and Severino into pitches that nobody thought they could be again. Right? They didn't get credit for that, but everybody's going to get the blame. You see, that's why I don't care much about these coaches. I really don't. You want to put a lot of it on Mendoza because he's the manager? Absolutely fine. Right? He is the leader of the staff. That's what he is. But I don't want to hear that, Chavez is the reason why Juan Soto couldn't get an RBI or couldn't get an RBI and run as a scoring position in the first 2 months of the season. Why did Brandon Nimmo become a no-show yet again? Right? Let's not act like a lot of these same players weren't here with different hitting coaches and different managers and different pitching coaches, because they were. So, yeah, but committee, again, but here's the problem with that. We won based on Jose Iglesias. Did you see how Jose Iglesias played for the Padres in the playoffs? Not very well. Right? JD Martinez, yeah, he was a leader, but he sucked. The reason why they won was because they got really good pitching, which has nothing to do with JD Martinez. And they hit last year, but look who hit. It was the guys that nobody expected to hit. Other than Lindor, Pete Alonso was terrible, Jeff McNeil was terrible, Francisco Alvarez was terrible, Vientos was good, Beatty was terrible last year. So if you're going to give the credit to JD Martinez, then why didn't guys like Alonso have great seasons, or guys like Jeff McNeil have really good seasons? Let's be honest. Could we call it what it is? It was luck. That's what it was. You had really good pitching because every day you had a guy go 6 innings in your starting rotation. We didn't have that this year. That was the biggest problem. We could not win games because the pitching was so bad. Regardless of what the offense did, the pitching was terrible. That's the problem. And I don't want to hear that Eric Chavez didn't get the best gets the best out of these players. Come on. If you look at individual stats, he did a hell of a job, no? I mean, Soto hit more home runs than he ever did in his career. Lindor had another 30-30 season. Pete Alonso had a great year. Brandon Nimmo had a solid year with the most home runs in his career. So we're not going to give credit to Eric Chavez there? Yeah, okay. But okay, so let me get this straight. So Mark Vientos played like shit this year and couldn't even get out of his own way. Couldn't even hit himself out of the paper bag this year. It's JD Martinez. Come on. That is the dumbest thing. That is so stupid. And you know what? They should be embarrassed saying that. Because if you don't do it on your own merit, then you're not a professional ball player. And Lindor had a 30-30 season. Maybe it's just that they can't handle the pressure. How about that? Because when there was pressure early on last year, and there was pressure because there was more people thinking, well, it is a transition year, but you know what? We're still going to have hope. Remember when JD Martinez says, hey, guys, why are you playing like there's a ton of pressure? There is no pressure yet because you were 11 games under 500. I don't care about JD Martinez. If that is the case, then everybody needs to be fired. David Stearns, Carlos Mendoza. You might as well trade Lindor. You might as well trade Alonso. You might as well don't sign Pete Alonso because then it's a point. And John Bobbio, you can go screw yourself too, which I don't care. So here's the problem. Yeah, committee, the chemistry was off. You know why? Because you lost. That's why. Like, that's the way it is. When you lose, chemistry looks bad. That's what happens, right? When Lindor first came on his team, and it was the whole problem with Jeff McNeil and the raccoon thing, right? Why did that happen? Because we were losing. Yet, when we were winning last year and we were winning in 2022, Jeff McNeil and Lindor, guess what? They were buddy-buddy. They might have not been the best of friends. They're probably not, going to a country club, having dinner and playing around the golf, but they became good teammates. When you lose, it looks like bad chemistry. But why did bad chemistry have Alonso have a great year? And Lindor have a good year? And Soto have a good year? And Nimmo have a good year? I mean, if you really think about it, which stars last year actually played well? Lindor. Nimmo was bad. Alonso was bad. Alvarez was bad. So what chemistry helped the stars in this team? Because what didn't show up was the other part of the team. The other part of the team that ultimately died. Like, I don't see what Jeremy Hefner, JD Martinez has to do with the pitching. I don't care what anybody says. JD Martinez, yeah, the hitting was fine. For the most part, it was fine. The Mets actually were scoring runs later in the year. The pitching were giving up 5-6 runs per game. That had nothing to do with JD Martinez. But let's make spade a spade. The pitching didn't do their job. You couldn't get 6 innings to save your life. You could put a gun to their head and they couldn't throw 6 innings. That is how bad they are. Committee, I agree with you. I understand that. I completely understand that. But if you look at the overall runners and score and clutch numbers, they were better in the second half. But again, the reason why clutch numbers are very silly was because how many times were the Mets giving up 5, 6, 7 runs a game? It felt like every day. I don't care how clutch you are. You're not coming back from 4 to 5 run deficits every single day. The Mets were down and felt like every game. And even when the offense gave them leads, the pitching blew those leads. So it's stupid to even think the fact that if you think the coaches are the problem, then why aren't they fired in the middle of the year? Clearly, that wasn't the case. Clearly, David Stearns needs a scapegoat. As I said many times, these guys are gone. If everybody thought they were going to stay, you're nuts. This is the only way to say, hey, we know we sucked this year. We know we didn't play to our capabilities, so let's blame these guys, which is hilarious. Because Jeremy Hefner all of a sudden gets all the blame, but got no credit last year. Eric Chavez gets all the blame this year, but none of the credit last year when the offense was a juggernaut, when they were scoring a ton of runs. I like how people don't give them credit, but when something goes wrong, they'll give them the blame. You can't have it both ways. Either you do both or you do none. That's why I'm not giving them the blame. I'm not. I'm sorry. I'm not telling you that Eric Chavez, like if JD Martinez is that important, then why didn't teams that had JD Martinez completely win all the time? I just don't understand it. If you're talking about individual players, like Mark Vientos, we all know why he sucked. He could not hit a slider. That has nothing to do with JD Martinez. You're going to tell me not one person in that dugout say, hey, lay off those sliders because, oh, look at that. In 1 month, when Vientos came back from the injury and figured out, hey, I shouldn't be swinging at that slider that's 6 feet off the plate, and I'll take my walks. And then when I actually try to hit the slider, I'll make sure I take it the other way. So JD Martinez wasn't around that month when Vientos was actually hot. I'm sorry. If he needs JD Martinez to tell him to not hit that slider or swing at that slider, then he's not a major league ball player. It's just stupid. I hate when everybody has to blame everybody else. This is why I can't stand this team. This is why I think everybody's on the table to get traded. I don't care about anybody. Anybody on this team. You want to trade Lindor? Trade him. See what you can get. Obviously, Soto's kind of stuck. But everybody else, you want to trade Nimmo? Trade Nimmo. I don't care. I don't care. You got to change this core. I don't care if you decide to bring back, you want to keep Lindor and bring back Alonso? Great. Then trade Nimmo, trade everybody. I don't care. I don't care. Find a way to change this core. Because if the core always finds excuses and it's this guy and that guy, oh, this guy wasn't here, but this guy didn't want to do anything, whatever, then you got to change it. I don't care about their numbers. If Pete Alonso was the problem, get him out. If Jeff McNeil's the problem, get him out. If Lindor and Soto had a gripe all season with each other and they never got along, then get rid of Lindor. You can't get rid of Juan Soto. This is the problem. This is what I don't understand. Like, everybody wants to re-sign Pete Alonso, and then that's it, right? Everybody's like, oh, find a way to get rid of Brandon Nimmo. It's not that easy. You could try, but it's not going to be easy. The only guy you can probably easily get rid of is Jeff McNeil. So everybody wants to re-sign Pete Alonso and have the same core and the same loser mentality that this core has been going with for years. You got to change it off. You got to change it somehow, some way. You can't continue to bring back the same shit and change the coaches, because let's not act like this core hasn't been through managers, coaches, GMs, and yet it's still the same bullshit. So who's the problem? Stop blaming everybody else when it's the same bunch of guys that have been here through all the coaches, all the managers, all the GMs, and all the president of baseball operations, and even different owners. So who's the problem? You guys got to wake up and realize what the real issue is. The players are the issue. This core is the issue. Can we stop acting like it's not? This is the most annoying thing that Met fans can't get through their heads. And I want everybody to hear me clearly, because too many people will hear this and say, why are you going after Met fans? Because sometimes you guys don't pay attention. You guys are so infatuated and put these players on pedestals, whatever your player is, whoever it might be. Some might be Lindor, some might be Alonso, some might be Nimmo, some might be McNeil or Soto, whatever. We got to stop blaming the wrong people. It's constant. How many GMs have we had? How many coaches have we had? Different coaches, staff. How many managers have we had? And yet, over the last 6 to 7 years, we had a lot of the same core players. except Soto, first time this year. So why do we keep on acting like it's everybody else's fault? How many more times are we going to change managers and coaches and blame those guys, those sorry suckers? Yet nobody wants to blame the real problem because we choked in 2022. We choked this year. We were an embarrassment in 2023. Last year was a transition year that turned into a great season, which was luck. Let's make it clear. It was luck. It wasn't great players. It was luck. That's all it was. We got to stop acting like the coaches are the problem. Yet, how many coaches have we had over the last 5-6 years? How many managers have we had? How many GMs have we have? Come on, guys. Wake up and smell the coffee. Wake up and pay attention to what's really going on here. This is why when I say massive changes, I don't care about the coaching staff. I don't. If you really think those are the difference makers, you guys aren't understanding what's going on. The same players are causing the same results. Why can't anybody see that? Have you seen our records? Like, why does anybody understand that? No, because everybody wants Nimmo because he smiles. Everybody wants Pete Alonso because he talks about the fans. Everybody wants Lindor here because, he was a captain. Everybody wants McNeil here because, you know what? At least he shows emotion. Let's stop it. You know what I want? I want winners. And maybe these guys are not winners. That's a strong possibility, and that goes for every one of them. Because you know what? As good as Alonso year was offensively, he was terrible defensively down the stretch the last 2 weeks of the season. Francisco Lindor was fine, but not great. Juan Soto was nowhere to be found the last 2 series of the year. Brandon Nimmo was a shell of himself the last month of the season. So you know what? I don't care who you get rid of. If you don't want Alonso back, great, find somebody else. You don't want Lindor back? Great, find somebody else. You didn't trade any of your prospects, so you might as well play them. I don't care anymore. I'm sick and tired of the same nonsense. Every year, it's the same thing. Fire this guy, fire that guy. Mendoza couldn't do nothing wrong last year. Met fans were kissing Mendoza's feet last year. David Stearns, the genius. I'm sick and tired of all these GMs, all these coaches, all these managers. Like, come on, guys. If you don't realize it by now, you're never going to get it. You guys want to be stuck with the same core that you fell in love with, and it doesn't matter. Then when you continue to lose and you it blows up in your face, and now these guys are 34, 35 years old, out of their prime, then you're going to be wondering why we're going through 3 or 4 losing seasons and a rebuilding type of year. You just can't do that. I told you for years, you got to make a decision. You got to make decision on these guys. I would have never re-signed Pete Alonso. I know that's crazy to say, but you know what? All you're going to do is have the same nonsense again this year. It's just silly to me. I just don't understand it. Yeah, Dolo, but it's not a start. You know what it is? It's the same shit over and over again. We fire the coaches. Like, do we all forget how many coaches and managers we fired over the last 6 years? You want me to name them all? You want to start with Mickey Callaway? Luis Rojas? Buck Showalter? We've had 4 managers in like a 6-year span. That's insane. God knows how many GMs we had. We had 2 different owners since 2019 or 2019. Like, come on. One, I don't want to hear Pete is not to blame because all I know, Pete's been a part of the 2019 fall, the 2021 fall, the 2022 fall, the 2025 fall. He's a part of that. So don't tell me not to blame Pete Alonso because he's part of the problem. He was part of the problem last year before he hit that home run in Milwaukee. Met fans were done with him. If he didn't hit that home run and we went home after that wild card, Met fans didn't want him signed back. Met fans were finally done with them. And then he hits a home run, has a solid postseason, and now everybody wants him back. He had a great year this year. It's just silly. It just doesn't make sense. that we're going to continue to bring back the same guys that continue to lose. Because you know what? Everybody likes Diaz and the trumpets. Everybody likes Pete Alonso and his goofiness. And, he loves his team. Yet he didn't want to sign an extension 3 years ago when he had an opportunity to do so. He didn't sign that extension. So, yeah, he wants to be a Met. Not really. So now we're going to have to overpay Pete Alonso to keep here, to have maybe 3 years of his prime left. That's great. And we're going to go through the same core again, and we're going to go through the same problems. Because when has this team been a winner with this core? Never. We embarrassed ourselves in 2022. 2023 was a complete disaster. 2024, the core was terrible except for Lindor. And we had a really good season based on luck. And then this year, when the core was all together and Juan Soto, we won 83 games. So who's the problem? Is it the coaches or it's the same core? No, Game of War. People don't like to hear that. Here's the problem. Nobody says it. Game of War, you want the same players back. You want the same core so everybody can wear number 20 and Pete Alonso, Polar Bear, and all that nonsense. And then the same thing with Lindor with his stupid smile and, Jeff McNeil with his emotions and all this other nonsense. And that's the problem. You fall in love with the character instead of the player. The losing players, by the way. The losing players. This core doesn't work together. How many more times are we going to see losing seasons until we realize that? When they're all 34, 35 years old, and now they're done and out of their prime, and they all still got 3-4 years left of their contracts, and then every Mets fan is going to be bitching, well, why did you trade them? Why did you do this? You should have changed. Yeah, well, you weren't saying that 4 years ago when they were actually in their prime. This core does not work together. What is the easiest way to change that core? Well, unfortunately, Pete Alonso didn't sign an extension for a long-term deal. He's part of that extradition. Jeff McNeil could easily be traded. Nobody didn't tell Pete Alonso to sign that extension a couple of years ago. He would have had that 7-year deal. He didn't want it. So that's on him. The Mets wanted him to be a career Met. He didn't take that deal. That's on him. Why do the Mets have to suffer and overpay for what? For what? A guy who can't throw to first base or any base? He can pick a few balls. Wonderful. Look at the defensive metrics the last 2 weeks of the season of Pete Alonso. Terrible in big moments. And I already said this. This core is rotten. Pick names. Get rid of them. Don't care. If you're going to continue to care about one player or two players, you're in trouble because you're going to get your feelings hurt. And the whole point is to win, not to just be happy that you can buy a jersey with a guy's name on it. And you can make silly jokes about the polar bear and being on an iceberg and count on a home run record that is embarrassing for an organization. I just don't understand. Like, why aren't more people understanding the fact that this core is the problem? You got to change it. And Game of War, you know what? Maybe my brain is rotten, but you're a moron too. So join the club. Yeah, I don't really care about the Yankees. It doesn't affect me either way. It really doesn't. And you know what? I hope a team like the Yankees win, or a team like, the Phillies win, who actually went out in the trade deadline and actually made moves and actually in the offseason got what they need or even build from their strength. I like that. Unlike the Mets, who half-ass deadlines and tell you that Clay Holmes is a starter now and Frankie Montas is going to be a back-end rotation guy. And, oh, by the way, Griffin Cannon with his 5 ERA, can't wait to see him in the rotation. And, oh, by the way, let's give $25 million to Sean Manaea with his 4 ERA, who hasn't been a good pitcher in like 6 years. Oh, yeah, and can't wait for Kodai Senga to be a co-ace. Yeah, how did that one work out? When you don't spend on starting pitching in the right way, and you bring in these reclamation projects and guys that had 3 or 4 good months, and now you bring them back and call them your ace, is laughable. I don't want to say I told you so, but I kind of did. And everybody who's been following this channel knows, very, very understands what I've been saying the entire time in this season. This wasn't, oh, in August, hey, the pitching sucks. I told you. No. This is from day one. Sometimes you got to get uncomfortable. I'm not saying to spend on 3 top-line starters in the free agent market, because nobody can tell me that one guy at the top of your rotation who is an actual ace couldn't have won 1 or 2 more games down the stretch for us. We couldn't count on Sean Manaea. We never can count on Kodai Senga. And then all these other guys are a bunch, just throw them at the wall and see what sticks. It's just silly. Like, I'm not saying to go out there and go out in the free agent market this offseason and get a guy like Framber Valdez or Dylan Cease, right? Those guys are risky, right? Framber Valdez has some emotional, weird anger issue. But he's a very good pitcher, but he seems to lose it sometimes. You saw it this year. In a contract year, he kind of lost it and kind of crossed up his catcher on purpose because of issues that were going on. Dylan Cease, I think he's a solid pitcher, but should I give him an 8-year deal, 7-year deal? I mean, I'm on board to get actual guys that actually proved it before, but I'm not stupid enough to think David Stearns would do that. Like, just because I would do it doesn't mean David Stearns is going to do it. He's not a guy that spends for pitching guys who are 30 years or older. Now, strong possibility that he can make a trade. And that's where I think he might go. You can't tell me that, oh, let's bring McLean and Sproat, Manaea, Senga, and Peterson back and say hey, everything's going to be okay. And, sing Kumbaya. That's not going to fly. And if that's the case, Stearns should be fired because that's a joke. You got to make a trade for a Sandy Alcantara. You got to make a trade for a Joe Ryan if he's out there, or whatever other top starter that might be available. Again, it's not even the offseason yet. I mean, for the Mets it is, but for baseball in general, when we get a better idea of what could be available trade market-wise, you have to look at that. You can't allow you got to remember, guys, Zach Wheeler's probably not going to be available next year. You don't think the Phillies are going to go out there and try for a starting pitcher, a top-line starter, to fill in for Wheeler? That's what we need. The Phillies make a big trade. Like, Real Muto was basically stolen from us because Sandy Alderson was an idiot and he went to the Phillies. How would that would have worked out? Maybe Alvarez, that everybody said that they didn't want to trade. I know how that's working out so well. Because we got a Francisco Alvarez who was supposed to be a power hitter, is now a singles hitter. So that's great. That's wonderful. And Game of War, you know what? You might be right. But you know what else is the problem? Pete and Vientos gave us nothing either. Now, I know they had good postseasons, but you know what? Vientos was terrible this year. And I'm not saying Ryan Clifford is the answer. I'm not saying that. But I don't know how anybody can say that this core can just be kept together. Because if you sign Pete Alonso, you're kind of stuck with the core that we've all seen lose time and time again. Now, if you don't care about that and think it's going to turn around, well, you know what? I'd love for you to be right. I truly would. I would love, even though I'm not the biggest fan of Pete Alonso, I'd love Pete Alonso still here. I think Pete Alonso fits this Mets team better than anybody else. But I'm not stupid enough to think that David Stearns is going to give him a 5-6 year deal worth $150 to $175 million. I don't believe he will. So I'm looking outside and say, all right, what would be available? We know David Stearns went to see that Japanese first baseman who hits a ton of home runs. I can't tell you a thing about him. So I'm not going to say, hey, sign him. Right? I don't want another Kaz Matsui on my hands. I don't. But that guy might be good. The hell do I know? I don't know nothing about him. And Dolo, wasn't that the problem this year? Right? If everybody wants to blame people too, Steve Cohen's a part of it, right? He stepped in over David Stearns in the Juan Soto situation. He stepped over David Stearns with the Pete Alonso situation. We all knew David Stearns wasn't going to sign Pete Alonso. We knew that. Now, would have been a disaster for this year? Maybe. But I always say I'd rather get two players. Give me two players to fill spots in your lineup. Both can hit 20 home runs. Both can have 80 RBIs. You have 40 home runs and 160 RBIs with two players. And you stretch out your lineup and you just solved your production from one player. From anybody, whoever it is. Right? What if I tell you that, all right, you know what? The Mets are going to look for a guy at first base that's a really good defensive player. Not a great hitter, but a really good first baseman. He can throw, catch, do everything, but he's not a great hitter. But we'll sign Kyle Schwarber to be our DH. Well, that kind of solves your production problem, right? You kind of change the core without making massive changes. Because Lindor, I think, is going to be here. Soto is going to be here. I find it hard to believe that Nimmo is going to get traded. I just unless the Mets are going to pay his entire contract, nobody's taking him for anything. So that's the only thing I could think of, unfortunately. So I'm not sure. Let's see. I'm trying to check the comments, guys. Give me a second. Yeah, Game of War. I don't want to hear about Eric Chavez with Vientos. Somebody says it was JD Martinez. Now it's Eric Chavez. You know what? If Vientos couldn't figure out how to hit a slider or lay off a slider, he's not a major leaguer. A coach shouldn't be able to tell you that when we're watching the game and we can see something that he didn't do last year, right? Why did you give Game of War? Let me ask you. Why didn't you give Chavez credit last year for Vientos' success? Oh, that's right. We don't give credit to coaches, to the coaching staff when things go well. It's only when they go bad they get the blame. That is silly. Either keep it consistent and give them credit and blame. If you're not going to give them credit, don't blame them. Vientos had a great season last year. You know why? Because he wasn't swinging at that garbage slider. He was taking that fastball and that slider that hung over the plate on the outside corner to the opposite field. He was pulling off of everything. That was why. Pulling off of everything. I'm not blaming anybody else for Vientos' fuck up. The same reason I'm not blaming any other coach for anybody else playing like crap. I'm not blaming Sean Manaea for Jeremy Hefner. Did Jeremy Hefner get credit last year for Sean Manaea, Luis Severino? No. But let's blame him this year. It's silly. Why didn't Jeremy Hefner get all the credit for 2023 Kodai Senga? Oh, that doesn't count? I don't want to hear about the blame. Eric Chavez had nothing to do with that. Vientos couldn't lay off a slider. Vientos pulled everything. Everything. When he started to hit for that 1 month, he started to hit the ball the other way. He started not to pull balls. He started to let the ball get deeper into the plate so we can take it to the opposite field. That was where he's at his best. Vientos is at his best when he's hitting the ball to center and right center. When he's constantly pulling off, he doesn't do nothing. That's why he was grounding balls to the shortstop basically on an everyday basis. Yeah, but Game of War, why were you criticizing Chavez and Mendoza? You know why? Because you need somebody to be a scapegoat. That's the problem. You criticized Mendoza for what last year? Guys had great seasons under both of those guys. But again, this is it's mostly the Met fans because they love to do this. They'll blame everybody else but the player. Because, Vientos is boy wonder and he can do nothing wrong. And that's the problem. Stop giving blame to coaches. Look, I don't think they did a good job, but I don't also give them all the credit from last year. I just don't. That's the problem. Like, don't blame guys, and you're not going to give them credit for last year, because that's the problem. There was no criticism of Chavez and Mendoza last year. Everything worked out for them. Everything. Sean Manaea had a career year. Luis Severino had a rejuvenation type of year and got a nice contract because of it. Vientos took over a job and had a Daniel Murphy postseason. Lindor had an MVP type season. Do we not give those guys credit now? The fact of the matter is, if you believe that Eric Chavez was the main issue, then we shouldn't have played well last year then. If Carlos Mendoza was the issue, then why did we play so well last year? It's stupid. The players sucked. That's the problem. They couldn't score runs. They were terrible runners in scoring position for the first 2 months of the season this year. Similar to 2024. Their clutch numbers got better, but wasn't at the capabilities and the level that we thought they could be. They should have been better. The pitching was a complete disaster. Terrible. I'm sorry. Hefner, I don't care if he has a magic wand. You can't fix a shitty Montas. Griffin Cannon, why he got hurt, but you really think he was going to save this rotation if he stayed healthy? No. He's had a career 5 ERA pitcher with the Angels. Like, he's no savior. You didn't sign Luis Severino. You let Jose Quintana go, and you Sean Manaea, who is a guy that I didn't think was going to be that good. The guy has a 4 ERA, career ERA, and we expected him to be an ace. And then Mr. Kodai Senga, who needs everything to be perfect, is untrustworthy. No, Kev, I'm not saying the coaches weren't bad, but again, this is the problem. We're going to fire the coaches and keep all these damn players, and then the same process happens again. Like, the coaches have not changed over the years with this same core. Like, everybody forgets that. But we've had 4 managers in 5 years, 6 years. God knows how many GMs, 2 different owners, many GMs, God knows how many coaches. Yet, well, committee, you sure about that? Are you sure? How sure are you? He didn't fix Luis Severino? What about Sean Manaea? I guess that doesn't count? Like, don't get me wrong. You win 83 games with high expectations of probably winning 95 games or more. That was probably where the expectation was. It's a team loss. Like, it's a team effort of losing. You don't lose like this and miss the playoffs and win 83 games, and you're going to leave anybody else not blame. Like, Stearns deserves blame, Mendoza, all the coaches, all the players. Everybody. It's hard to lose like this and miss the playoffs and think everybody doesn't have a hand in that terrible season, because that's true. Now, what you hope is that whoever they bring in as coaches does something. I don't know what. I don't know how much you can change of these guys. Like, individual seasons of our core guys, the numbers look really good, right? Why didn't it become a successful season? Same thing goes for the pitching. I don't see what Jeremy Hefner was going to do with, Waddell and Davinsky as our openers for how many times this year? What was Hefner going to do with Jonah Tong, who has 2 pitches and doesn't have confidence in his 3rd pitch yet? That's Stearns for putting them in that spot because he wasn't ready, which is not Tong's fault. He tried. He gave it his all. Brandon Sproat, still needs a little bit more development. It's not Mendoza's fault. He had nobody else to go to. What was Jeremy Hefner going to tell him? Not much. Nolan McLean was the guy who was actually ready. But even him couldn't fix the shit that was going on. The bullpen was a disaster. I'm sorry. What is Jeremy Hefner going to tell a veteran like Tyler Rogers, Ryan Helsley, Gregory Soto? These guys have been in the league for years. What is he going to tell them? I just, I know. I think Hefner should have been gone years ago because I'm sick and tired of Met fans continuing to talk about him and say fire him. Because Jeremy Hefner is going to get hired by another team in about 5 minutes. As soon as they're allowed to hire coaches, they will. He will get hired. Because for some reason, and I don't know why, I'm not saying I agree, but around the league, Jeremy Hefner has a great reputation. I have no idea why. I don't know. I can't tell you. I can't tell you. So does Jeremy Hefner get credit for Jacob deGrom? Or does Jacob deGrom just gets all the credit? Right? Because weren't Jeremy Hefner around for all those years with Jacob deGrom? Most of it. When he actually got into his Cy Young Award years. Again, I am not a fan of these coaches. I don't blame them the same way I don't give them credit. I think we overhype a lot of these guys and give them way too much blame, but so little credit when things go right. I'm blaming the professional ball player. If you can't figure it out on your own, I'm not saying that, at times you need a mouthpiece and maybe somebody to have a conversation with. Of course, that's what these coaches hear. I mean, nowadays, these coaches aren't like they used to be back in the day where they used to yell at you and say, man up. Now it's like, you got to rub their shoulder. You got to, caress them and, be polite. I don't think it's coaching the way we probably expect it to be. It's not the same anymore. I made a mistake. I'm getting yelled at from my coach. I remember that shit in high school and college. Now you make a mistake, you'll get him next time, buddy. No, this ain't Little League. So, yeah, the master plan is, let me not take no more blame, even though he did take the blame. I'll give him that. He did take a lot of the blame during that press conference. But the master plan better be bringing in an ace. Because Nolan McLean is not going to excite me when he got Shomania and the rest of the bums in this rotation. McLean is fine, but I'm not going to put Nolan McLean as our ace. Give me an ace guy with Nolan McLean. I feel a lot better McLean as our number 2. If McLean becomes an ace, great. Now we got 2. You're allowed to have that. The Mets are allowed to have 2 guys that can pitch like top of the rotation guys. They're allowed to. I know a lot of people don't believe that, but we're allowed to, right? There's no rule against that. It's okay for half the teams in the playoffs still have like 3 aces. Did you watch these games? Make no mistake. Look at the Dodgers. Look at the Yankees with Carlos Rodon and Max Fried. I mean, Jesus. Wait until you see Seattle. Watch the Brewers. I would be shocked if the Tigers are going to trade Skubal. But I could be wrong. Now, Alcantara, I said it from the beginning. He should have been a Met at the trade deadline. I don't care what you had to give up. You hope one of your top pitching prospects are Sandy Alcantara. How about Sandy Alcantara would have looked the second half of the season for the Mets? All he did was go 6 innings and have a really good second half when the majority of Met fans didn't want him because of his first half numbers. It's crazy to me. Well, Kev, I don't know what you're talking about, but you're not getting the Mets are not again, guys. I would be shocked, and you know what? I would be happy. I would be excited if David Stearns went out there and got a Framber Valdez or a Zach Gallen or a Dylan Cease and signed one of those guys. I'd be over the moon. But he's not spending top dollar in a long-term deal on starting pitching. If you haven't learned that already, then, David Stearns basically says it to you every time he speaks. In his press conference, you could just tell I want to develop starting pitching, which is fine. But it's okay for the Yankees to sign Max Fried and you have Cam Schlittler throwing the best game a rookie has ever thrown in the postseason. That's okay. You're allowed to develop pitching and still spend on starting pitching at the top of your rotation. You're allowed to. He doesn't like to do it. That's his philosophy. I'm sorry, but it hasn't worked. It really hasn't. So I don't know, man. I really don't know. I think the easiest route is to trade. And let's be honest, the Mets have more than enough prospects to trade. Why can't you trade for a Sandy Alcantara or a Joe Ryan or another top rotation guy that could be available this offseason? Why not? Because next year we're going to be talking about Jet Williams and Ryan Clifford and Carson Bench. So what, we're going to have Jet Williams, Mark Vientos, Brett Beatty, Ronnie Mauricio, Luisano Acuna. Great. Wonderful. So do we really need all of them? No, we don't. As I said at the trade deadline, to have 4 of those guys that have play the same positions on the same roster at the same time was so stupid. The roster construction was an embarrassment. It made no sense. Ronnie Mauricio barely got playing time. Luisano Acuna couldn't be a starter because he couldn't hit. So he became a defensive replacement and a pinch runner. That's great for a top prospect. You had 2 top 10 prospects in Mauricio and Acuna on the bench. Find me another major league team that does that with more than one guy. And I'm not talking about a September call-up. I'm talking about somebody who's been up here all season or for most of the season. It's stupid. Michael, yeah, I would take Zach Gallen. I take anybody that is already proven because I'm sick and tired of waiting for these prospects. And the reason why the Mets failed was because the Stearns brought in terrible pitching, number one. And then you put these poor kids. Some of them weren't ready. Some were not going to be saviors just yet in a terrible spot. So I would take any proven starter that you can tell me is a top 1 or 2 starter. I would. Zach Gallen, Valdez, Joe Ryan, Sandy Alcantara. You want to keep naming them? Any one of them. I'd take any of them. Because nobody can tell me that Nolan McLean would beat any of those guys. Even though I really like Nolan McLean. I think he's already a number 2. I'm not calling him an ace. I'm not doing that yet. First, that's not fair to the kid yet. Because that puts way too much pressure on him that he doesn't need right now. But if the Mets were smart, which, that is in question, why not get a top starter? So you don't put all the pressure on Nolan McLean to be that guy. Then you can if you bring in a Sandy Alcantara, let's just say it's Alcantara. He's your ace. Nolan McLean is your number 2. Now you can mess around with Minaya and Clay Holmes and David Peterson. And if you don't trade Kodai Senga, great. He's your guy in the back end of the rotation that you don't trust. You can work with your 3 through 5 or 6. You can't have question marks at the top of your rotation and expect it to be okay. Because everything has to work out after that. You can't go into a situation where you got all these really good lineup, and then you're just going to mess it up with a bad rotation. And then you're going to tell me that, the bullpen. By the way, guys, let's just talk about the bullpens really quick. The Yankees have a terrible bullpen. Terrible. They're not good, except for Bednar. They got through. You know why? Starting pitching. It's not like they scored 20 runs in a game. They won low scoring games. You know why? Starting pitching. All right. Let's look at the Padres. Right? Their starting pitcher was kind of They have a great bullpen. They even revamped it at the deadline. How did that work out for them against the Cubs? Why'd the Cubs win? You see their pitching? They're starting rotation. That was without Cade Horton, by the way. How did that work? Now, the Dodgers against the Reds, I mean, that's laughable. But the Dodgers, right? What do they have? They have Blake Snell, Yamamoto. You will see Seattle. We'll see the Brewers. All of them have top starters in their rotation. Now, I'm not saying that that's the end-all, be-all, but you know what? You get a chance. How many times did the Mets did not have chances? Dolo McLean's not an ace yet. Could we calm down with that? The kid pitched, what, 12 games this year? Calm down, please. Do I think he can be? Absolutely. But why put the pressure on him? You don't need to. Not when you have guys available on the free agent market and the trade market. There's no need for it. There is no need for that. I think McLean can be an ace. But what? Look, here's the thing about like a guy like Sandy Alcantara. He has, what, 3 years left in a player option, I believe? Great. In those 3 years, now, McLean is still on a rookie status. So you're not losing a year from him. So over those 3 years, you can have him as the number 2 for Sandy Alcantara. While Sandy Alcantara gets older and probably gets a little worse year by year, Nolan McLean can take that spot and McLean can be number 2. That's okay. Yeah, Michael, I don't think the bullpen's very good. I don't think so. I think Devin Williams is a disaster waiting to happen. Cruz, I mean, if, he gave up a 400-foot shot and got very lucky, and he was, going nuts like he shook a guy out. They got Dela Cruz, they got Weaver, who can't be trusted. I don't think they're both. The names look nice. They don't pitch very well. They haven't. Bednar, I really like. That was the guy I wanted the Mets to get. I think that was a great move by the Yankees. Bednar is probably one of the guys I trust. But you know what? When you got a guy like Schlittler going to the 8th inning, when you got Rodon and Free go 6-7, you don't got to use 7 guys out of your bullpen like the Mets do. It's easier. You can go to your very, very small trusted circle of pitchers. That's the difference. That's the difference. There's no mistake that teams that went into their bullpen, like the Boston Red Sox, like the Padres, like the Reds, all of them were taking their starters out in the 2nd and 3rd inning. You're not going to win. When your pitchers go 5 at least or more, that circle of trust of arms in your bullpen gets smaller. And you don't have to worry about using your 6th guy out of your bullpen. It doesn't work. David, I think the Yankees are on a good path. But we'll see. I don't think Toronto is a juggernaut. I think they're kind of fake, to be honest with you. Again, Seattle scares you? No? I don't know who. I think Seattle would be getting a home field if the Yankees make it, right? With Seattle and the Yankees. I think Seattle. But again, Seattle, I don't know. Maybe it's their year. I don't know. Things happen. They got a great pitching staff, which should concern anybody. But their biggest problem with the Mariners was, will they hit? They pitched, but they couldn't hit. If they hit, their pitcher is probably going to pitch well. So that's helpful. So I don't know. Well, David, I don't want to be like the Yankees. I want to be the Mets. I don't care what the Yankees do. Like, their success, nobody has. Their constant playoff appearances, nobody has. That's why when Yankee fans say, oh, they want Cashman fired, it's silly because those are spoiled brats. They are. And that's not a bad thing. Look, I don't want to be a spoiled fan. I mean, I choose teams that destroy me and give me a lot of pain. I'm a Mets fan. I'm a Knicks fan. I'm a Rangers fan. And unfortunately, I'm a Cowboys fan too. So, I'm not running into championships here. And David, they should be bashing the Mets. I don't care if the Yankee fans talk back at them. I mean, what are we really going to say? At times we have, back and forth banter and, back and forth sometimes, especially during the Subway Series, but who cares? They have all the history. We don't. What was it, 27, 28 world championships to 2? I mean, no chance. But I'm not bringing up history as an argument. When I say something about the Yankees, I'm saying it because I think it's fair. Could I be wrong? Sure. But I think it's fair. Like, I don't think their bullpen's very good. But the problem is, I don't think any other team in the American League is that better. I think the Yankees have a better lineup than most teams. I think they have the best rotation left in the American League. So, I mean, some can say, well, what about Seattle? Yeah, sure. But we'll see. So, because we started this live stream and we're an hour in, once again, guys, if you're just tuning in or you're just watching later after the stream is over, Hefner, Chavez, Gibbons, Barnes, and Saba are all gone. Hefner got fired, Chavez got fired, Barnes got fired, Saba got fired. John Gibbons kind of agreed to walk away. I think he says that he thinks they needed change. So he didn't technically get fired, but he's gone too. So the coaching staff, except for Antoine Richardson, the first base coach, which well-deserved, he should stay, what the Mets did with stolen bases. Every other guy on the coaching staff is gone. Now, the question is going to be, who's going to be the pitching coach? Who's going to be the bench coach? Who's going to be the hitting coach? Who's going to be the third base coach? Over the next couple of weeks, we're probably going to hear about who's going to be talking about interviews. Now we know Carlos Beltran has been with the team. I would be shocked if he's not the hitting coach. I think Willie Randolph is going to be the bench coach because Carlos Mendoza, when he first got hired, when they asked him about his coaching staff, he talked about having a great relationship with Willie Randolph. I don't care if he's a former Mets manager. I don't care if he's a former Yankee. I want a guy that Carlos Mendoza trusts. We know David Stearns hired Gibbons, hired Saba, hired Antoine Richardson, hired everybody under Carlos Mendoza. I want Mendoza to feel comfortable going to Willie Randolph. I don't think John Gibbons was kind of undermining Mendoza or anything like that. But Mendoza and John Gibbons, that wasn't his guy. Same thing with Hefner. Same thing with Richardson. Same thing with Saba. Same thing with, everybody. I want Carlos Mendoza to feel like he can go to Willie Randolph, and be comfortable having a conversation with him. Not worrying that somebody's trying to undermine him. I want guys he can trust. We know Beltran has been in the organization already. Mendoza knows him. So I'm fine with that, right? Willie Randolph is a good man. He was a really good manager for the Mets. He's a great baseball mind. Why not? He can help without infielders if need be. And that's fine. Yeah, but though, you know what, though? You know baseball. I'm sorry. Like, he's a bench coach. It's not like he's going to be the hitting coach. He's going to be the bench coach. Like, you don't think Willie Randolph is paying attention to baseball and seeing what's going on? I think he'd be fine. Yeah, Dolo, but I don't know. I mean, it's possible. Belcher could be the bench coach, which, again, I'm fine with. It doesn't bother. Like, again, we're really looking way past this. Like, maybe Beltran will teach us how to cheat. I don't give a shit. Win. I don't care. They didn't take away the Astros World Series championship. I don't care. If you got to bang a trash can, let's go. Somebody's got to hit the apple to call a pitch. I don't care. I really don't care anymore. It's crazy. Like, bring people in here that Mendoza can trust. That's it. I don't care how I feel about it. They could bring in every guy that I don't like. What the hell does that have to do with the team? If Mendoza feels comfortable with those guys and Mendoza has a say, because let's be honest, guys, it's stupid to not have your manager have a say in his coaching staff. David Stearns can be up in his suite. Mendoza has to deal with him on the bench. So whatever Mendoza wants, give it to him. If he wants Willie Randolph here, give him. If you want Carlos Beltran here, get him over here. Get guys that Mendoza feels like he can trust. Because isn't that the point? We talk about chemistry like it's the end-all be-all. We only talk about the players when it comes to chemistry. What about the coaches? Maybe the coaches weren't a good fit, but wait, hold on. What about last year? Oh, I know that don't count. Let's not give credit, but let's give the blame. I just want Mendoza to feel like he can have a conversation with the bench coach and act like, I can trust this guy. He knows Willie Randolph for years. Obviously, he has a connection with Beltran over the last couple of years because obviously Beltran was with the Yankees too. So Mendoza knows him as well. I want Carlos Mendoza to be comfortable with his coaching staff, not guys that David Stearns likes. It's stupid. David Stearns don't have to deal with them on the bench. Mendoza does. So, guys, with all these guys getting fired or being let go or, saying bye to the team, we'll see who's going to replace as the pitching coach, hitting coach, bench coach, and God knows what, third base coach, and who knows what else. So we will see. We will wait for that news. It'll probably be in a couple of weeks. But as we know, Antoine Richardson and Carlos Mendoza, the ones standing on the Mets coaching staff, guys. So, guys, with that said, I will be doing a season recap video probably either tonight, that's going to be posted, or tomorrow. And I'm also going to do a grade for every player, manager, and president of baseball ops. So I'm going to grade the entire organization from top to bottom for the New York Mets. So season recap, and I'm going to grade everybody on this organization. And at the end of that video, I'm going to grade the overall team. So obviously it's not going to be very pretty, and I'm already almost done with it. So check out for that over the next day or two. Thank you for watching the breaking news here as Mets coaching staff gets wiped out and all new blood's coming in, guys. Have a good day, guys. Enjoy your Friday. Let's go, Mets. And who the hell cares who wins in the postseason of Major League Baseball, because it's not going to be the New York Mets. Have a great day, guys, and see you next time.
Meet the Mets, meet the Mets. Step right up and greet the Mets. Bring your kiddies, bring your wife. Guaranteed